Robin SP and 4.5 update is just a few days away, and today I'm here with the should you or should you not summon for her. We're going to be going over what Robin generally does, going over her strong vertical investment, and then talking about reasons why you should or should not pull. At the very end, for people who do decide to pull, I will have an optimal investment guide showing how you can optimally go about vertically investing into her. Stuck grinding in Honkai Star? Need stellar Jades fast? We've got you covered. Head over to U7 Buy, your ultimate gaming hub for safe, fast, and cheap in-game top-ups. Whether it's Star or your other favorite games, U7 delivers instantly and players love it. Check out their Trustpilot reviews, they're actually top ranked. On the Honkai Star top-up page, you can recharge your account in seconds. When you head over to the page, all you need to do is pick the pack you do want, enter your UID and server, and buy now. If you want codes and coupons to apply, be sure to create an account for proper savings. USD is a recommended usage currency for best saving. Once everything is set, you can see the savings you're about to get. Want even extra savings? Be sure to use code PRESR at checkout for 5% off. Perfect for last minute pulls or surprising a friend. Click on the link in the description, recharge fast, save more, and keep blazing those trails. So for starters, let's go over what Robin does, what her role is for the people who don't know. So Robin is the brand new generalist support, and she does so many things. Of course, the main thing you look at in the general support is what amp they provide. So Robin is able to provide defense ignore, 100% action advance, energy, some vulnerability to enemies, and some damage percent through her technique. Also, either an attack buff for attack scalers or crit damage for anyone that isn't an attack scaler. And to top it all off, her personal damage if you do decide to build for it, or how the vertical investment would go. So these are all basically universal things, and the way she functions is simple. She has this mechanic called vibe stacks. Going into battle, the more you have, the more memo spreads you can summon. She can have up to 3. Just any amount will have 1 on the field. Once you do reach a total of 6 or more, you summon the second one, and then 12 or more, you will summon the third one. All 3 on the field will make Robin enter the feverish state. That's where she deploys a zone, and she herself is no longer actually going to be on the field. It's just going to be the memo sprite that takes action, but that's also when everything is active. The defense ignore, all the other stuff, the damage percent is through technique at least, so that's different. And yeah, the action advance plus the energy is through her ultimate. You're able to choose an ally, advance their action by 100%, and regenerate them a fixed amount of 20% of their max energy. And this can be played with many ways, such as even on like dual DPS teams, you can choose the one that benefits off it most. I'm going to use the Remembrance team as an example here. There's actually a lot of people who have posted showcase that have been doing this wrong, as they have chosen to action advance casters, which you can think about it, it doesn't really provide much of a benefit because yes, she can skill and get some new bud. However, the energy stuff is completely wasted. Instead, you can choose to action advance Evernight, which is going to be able to detonate her jellyfish anyways to get cash with some new bud, but also benefit from the energy. So you can actually choose someone else if they're not the main focus, but they still are a sub DPS in the case of Evernight, or on an actual dual DPS case of something like the Dual Kings team. In this case, you would usually choose Artoria as she is the primary focus, but there are some cases where you can choose Gilgamesh instead. That's mainly like an investment diff thing, so that's a lot more different. But yeah, there's a lot of ways you can do it. Of course, the general way is to just action advance the main DPS, which is usually going to be the playstyle, but some cases like Remembrance or Dual Kings, there are other things you want to do. You don't just want to action advance just the main one. It's a bit different in Dual Kings because you're still mostly action advance Saber, but on something like Remembrance, just action advancing someone like Cash instead of Evernight is not really the play. Or maybe there's going to be a specific scenario where it might be the play. So multiple ways to actually play that as well. And yeah, just the general amp, like as I mentioned, everything provided here is so good. Defense ignore / shred is always generally just good. The further you go up, the better it becomes. Damage percent, not everyone can use it, but it's still good. It's just a focus on a technique, and it's only for 2 turns, so that's not what you focus on. Memo Sprite talent as enemies take more damage, which is universally good. The attack buff or crit damage, that's basically universally good, because for attack scalers, they'll of course love more attack. And then for anyone that's not an attack scaler, they get the crit damage. So basically the only case where it wouldn't be too beneficial is like Break, which that's like one of the teams you don't really use her on. So yeah, it's pretty whatever there. But she just provides so much because she's just so strong with all the amp that she is able to give, plus the action advance, which is always just a good thing. Her own self-damage, since the Memo Sprite attack itself is going to be doing damage increases based off vibes. The whole point is just to be generating vibes. You get that through other allies' turns. But yeah, the actual effect increases since the defense ignore is 15% plus vibes at times 0.5% of enemy targets defense. The attack buff is also based off vibes. 16% plus vibes times 0.4%, while crit damage is also 40% plus vibes times 1.5%. Pretty much the vibes is the core aspect of our playstyle you want to maintain a bunch as possible, since it also does tick down from how she functions. When you are in the fever state, it is a thing that has something on the countdown. Once its turn is up, it's going to consume half of the actual fever stacks you do have. Sorry, not fever stacks. It's going to consume half of the vibes you own with a minimum of 12. So you will have to have it build up quickly, and then it will be consumed halfway, and then you have to build it up again, so on and so forth. As lower you have, the less of the effect. The higher you have, you want to max it. But then we look at her vertical investments. So we're going to look at her E1, E2, and S1. I'm just going to start with S1. So her S1 is able to provide 30% max HP, where using ultimate recovers a skill point for all allies. Entering combat will advance the wearer's action by 30%, where gains new melody for 2 turns, where having new melody will increase the team's speed by 20%. This light cone is very, very underrated in my opinion. Like, you can probably find a bunch of videos dogging on this light cone, or a lot of people who maybe don't understand how it works, but let's go through it one by one. So the max HP increase, that alone is going to be nice, since one, it increases damage since she can scale off HP, but also mainly for how it can somewhat affect buffing, since if you do look at the specific attack buff, it's by an amount equal to 16% plus 5 times 0.4% of Robin's max HP and such, so you still do build up HP. The extra skill point, that part is pretty whatever. Most of her teams are not going to struggle with that. The action advance part, this is really, really damn good. Her technique already does give her a 20% advance forward. You combine it with this actual light cone, that's a total of 50%. That's higher than Von Walk. And guess what? You don't have Von Walk in the equation yet. Add Von Walk and you have a whopping 90% action advance at the start of battle for Robin. That is broken for setups and AV saving. AV is a literal core mechanic in this game. Every mode has something functioning off AV, whether it's a certain amount of AV in a cycle. That's usually what it always is. APOC is literally, that's what the whole thing is about. This is such an insane AV saver thanks to that action advance. And then the speed directly plays into that too. So it sounds weird because it's like, yeah, it ends in 2 turns. But if you remember, Robin leaves the field. Before you would reach 2 turns, Robin would leave the field. She basically just gets 1 turn and then she's gone. That is pretty much making this light cone a permanent 20% speed increase. On some of our teams, it won't matter always, but there is multiple cases where there are combinations of teams where they are going to benefit. For an example, when you pair her with remembrance units, there's always Cyrene and Hyacine, and even some cases Evernight can benefit from the speed. On Himiko Nova teams, the action advancer, if you have one, if it's either RMC, Sparkle, even someone like Mortanix Blade, they can benefit from the speed. Robin herself is getting the speed buff, so there's that too. And then if there's ever a sustain, usually always a sustain is built fast, so they get a benefit. This light cone is really, really, really underrated. I will say it's not better than her actual other stuff that we're talking about, but it's still very underrated for those reasons. This light cone is quite good, and I genuinely don't understand why it's so downplayed. But then we do look at her actual Eidolon. So E1 itself is going to make the Memo Sprites record 100% of the non-true damage dealt by allied targets. When using Memo Sprite skill, it additionally does true damage equal to 11% of the total recorded damage plus current vibes times 0.1% to the enemy target with the highest HP and clears 50% of the recorded value. So this is just an insane damage increase as long as your team is doing good damage. Now, every time the Memo Sprite gets to attack, all that recorded damage is going to go against the enemy with the highest HP, doing a lot of damage as long as you were doing good damage. It's basically a single target mini Cypher ult that records or record clears a little less. There's some other saying where it kind of functions like a actual true damage thing. I don't remember the exact formula of that. But yeah, nonetheless, you can just imagine it's pretty much just more damage to that person with the highest HP, which is obviously always going to be a problem. It's always usually a boss or a big elite enemy that has a bunch of HP. They're going to take that much more damage. And this is really good on across all their teams, because all the teams, you're going to have everyone doing damage usually, besides like the action advance supports, obviously. The only time where this dupe doesn't matter is strictly Finon, but that's just because everyone gets departed. The Memo Sprites are no longer there. That is literally the only team where this E1 has no effect. Every other team, this E1 is such a big good increase. I don't know what big good is. I can't even speak, bro. That's how bad that's how broken it is, bro. I can't even speak. In every other team case, it's going to be a really big increase. Then her E2, which is also broken. So first, it gives everyone 18% all-type res pen. It increases the maximum vibes by 20. First time an ally target uses an ability that causes Robin to gain vibes within any target's turn, she gains an additional 2 points. So a TLDR on that is res pen, increased vibes, and extra generation for vibes to maintain the higher uptime. Res pen, of course, universally loved. That's going to to increase damage by a lot. The Vibe's max limit increase is also crazy because you capped at 50 originally, now you cap at 70. That's going to increase the total value of all her buffs. So the defense ignore, you can get more of that. You can get more attack percent, you can get more crit damage, you can get more damage. Anything that has some vibe scaling is just going to be increased. That's how broken that is. And it helps you generate it quicker, as I did mention. So now you can maintain uptime on it faster. You can build it up for the first time faster. And then once the fever actually goes on, countdown procs, you lose half of it, you can build up a lot quicker. So that E2 is just so insane. So she has a combination of such a good E1 and E2. That's kind of why many don't really consider her light cone, because E1 and E2 are just generally more valuable. However, I always want to say that her E1, not E1, S1 is so good still, because people end up thinking it has absolutely no value. No, that is not true. It is a really good light cone. But yeah, her E1 and E2, absolutely insane. E1, just big damage to the highest enemy's HP. And then E2 is just an insane damage increase. Res pen, higher max vibe limit, increasing all her own buffs, and also letting her gain vibes quicker so you can max out the buffs even faster. And then also build back to it faster when it does reset half. And finally, reasons why you should or should not summon. This is really another Mortanix Blade case where there really isn't a single account that I don't recommend pulling her. Really, on any single account, I can see her having value. The literal only way that she wouldn't have too much value is quite literally if you strictly run like an invested Silverwolf SP team and then your second team is like break. If that's like your two specific cases and you don't even have a third team, in this case you would have a character to build the third team around because there's so many options. You can choose Himiko Nova, you can even choose Phynon, you can choose Anaxa, hell, you can choose Aglia, you can choose more modern stuff like Bladeville. There's so much things you can do for that third team. So even in this two case of team scenario with Elation and Break, which by the way, there's some Elation iterations where you can use her, it's really just Break that doesn't, you're gonna have this really broken generalist. Even just at Easer S0, like again, she provides so much stuff. Defense ignore, damage percent, vulnerability, attack or crit damage depending on, no, I can't speak, bro, that's how broken this is. Attack or crit damage depending on what you scale off of. Personal damage somewhat if you do build for that, but that's mainly focused on E1 specifically, but you can still build around it. She's just such a stacked character that really just isn't an account that I wouldn't recommend getting her on. Even if you're looking at iterations of Wayflare, Aventurin, even he does have a lot of iterations with her on the team because she's just that good for him as well. Like, I'm telling you, she is good with so many characters. If you look at modern teams like Bladeville or Venturin or Gilgamesh or Dual Kings, good on all of those. Himiko Nova, good on that. Elation teams actually has some iterations. Then you go back to older teams such as the Archer Rin team even. You can use them there. And by him, I mean her, lol. Phynon teams can use her. Anaxa teams can use her. You can use her on Remembrance iterations. There's multiple with Castress, without Castress, with Evernight, without Evernight, with Cyrene, without Cyrene. Usually it's always a case with Cyrene or without Cyrene. That's usually the thing you can do. And Evernight isn't always replaced, of course, because Evernight is kind of holding the team together. Same with Hyacinth, obviously. But yeah, those teams can use it. You can use her with Aglia. And then super older DPS like Fascia, Akron teams, you can use her there. There's just really a case for like basically everyone that isn't specifically Break. That's like the only team that doesn't use her at all. So yeah, honestly, this is a character where, like Mortanix Blade, I recommend everyone to just have. Even if you can't really invest into her too much despite her broken vertical investment, she is just that good. That's why I really recommend people to pull her. And now at the very end, when you have decided to pull her, which congratulations, you're doing good, how would you go about vertically investing into her? You probably already got this if you did watch the vertical investment overview part, but the optimal way to invest is E1, then E2, then S1. E1's value of the highest HP target is just so good. E2, I already stressed how broken it is with how it provides res pen, the increased limit to increase all her buffs, and then the extra vibe generation. Those two dupes are more valuable than her S1, but as I did say, her S1 is a lot more underrated, and it's a very valuable thing. I just don't think the value is nearly as good as E1 or especially E2. So really, in every case, it would be E1, E2. Specifically for Phynon players, that's where the E1 would be a bit more redundant. But even then, I would highly recommend if you are trying to pick one to invest into E1 so you can try to get E2 because that's going to obviously be better. So yeah, E1, E2, then S1. That is the best way you can possibly invest into Summer Robin. And that is the full should you or should you not summon for Summer Robin. I do hope you found this video helpful. If you did, drop a like, it would be greatly appreciated. If you're new to the channel or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell for future videos like this along with all the tips and all content. And I'll see you later. Peace out.